Making a documentary is a team effort, and you can quote me on that. I rely on talented folks in the production crew and, of course, post-production personnel, and the researchers who also provide some source material for me. And music and sound play a really key role in setting the mood for a film as well. So that's a really key part of making a documentary. The partnership between a director and a composer, I think, can be one that's full of excitement and creativity, and that was definitely the case with Canfield Roots. I'm chatting today with Liz Dimo, who is a multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, and the composer for what we'd like to call the underscore for Canfield Roots. And that's the music that's composed to underpin all the visuals and all the other audio in the film. So Liz, welcome. Thanks for doing this. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your music career to date?
For sure. So thank you, first of all. I've been playing music pretty much all of my life. Some of my earliest memories as a child are playing music, figuring out I could play music by ear, singing harmonies, writing songs with my sister, things like that. And just as I got older, I picked up every instrument I could, taught myself how to play it, and was just so curious about music in general. When I was a teenager, I started joining rock bands. I was in all of the, concert stage, jazz band at high school. I played saxophone, all of them. And then on the other side, my professional career, I was working in marketing and IT for 20 years of my life with my passion, which was music, kind of on the sidelines as a part-time career. And just about a year and a half ago, I was turning 40, and I realized I had spent half of my life, 20 years, kind of working at a job that I had just fallen into, and decided to make a big change in my life and be, definitive about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be when I grow up, finally. So in a few months, I quit my job and I started teaching myself full-time how to become a composer for film and music. And that was my 100% focus for the next year and a half, which led me to you and to this documentary. And I have been, I've been in bands, I've toured as a musician, as a bassist for a Toronto-based kind of experimental dream pop band for many, many years. So I'm no stranger to the music scene and making music, but film music was something I was always curious about, and it just kind of clicked when I made that change.
Awesome. I hear sirens in the background, so that leads into my next question. And it's all about sound. Is there instrumentation or sounds that really inspire you and draw your attention?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a total nerd for sound and music, and I'm a proud nerd. So I'm always hearing opportunities around me, the washing machine, a juicer, the coffee grinder. All of these things make rhythmic, very often sounds, and interesting sounds that you can distort and play with to make really interesting music with and sounds. Musically, I'm always drawn to music that challenges me, either intellectually, emotionally, or musically, stuff that has something interesting going on and unexpected. I love kind of the unexpected in music and drama. And I'm a sucker for emotional, raw music that really takes you to a different place. Just as soon as you hear it, you emotionally go somewhere else.
I think that's where you and I started to really connect and find a common ground there, because that's some of the things that really connect with me with music too. When I start seeing pictures, it's usually that sort of, raw, not unrehearsed, but really close to the emotional bone kind of music or performance.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me, over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free, and be free.
I kind of started thinking about music fairly early on in Canfield Roots. You and I both know where the source material all came from. I think it came from a few places like that. Can you briefly sort of outline what you and I guess, collaboratively and separately came to find as far as source material and what you built out of that?
For sure. Well, I mean, so initially I hadn't seen any of the sequences or video or anything like that, but you had told me about it, what it was. And you had sent me a little bit of research to start my work with, and a handful of tracks that were mostly hymnals, and you had pointed me in the direction to kind of start my research with Baptist hymnals and kind of like old tunes and melodies that really kind of evoked a feeling and a passage, and a lot of them were actually, I mean, it's in the series you hear them talk about, they were signals that they used to pass messages through the Underground Railroad and for the freedom seekers to kind of share information in secret, which is just, it's amazing. It's an amazing way to use music and lyrics and things like that. So you had given me a handful of these, and together we kind of selected or were drawn to a couple of the melodies. So that was kind of the basis of the music. And then we talked about instrumentation and what we wanted the sound, the feel and the sound of the music to be. And that kind of, once you select that core instrumentation, it kind of binds, the 6 episodes together. It gives it a core connecting tissue to carry it through. So we wanted some, really classic instruments of that time, which were piano, get some folk instruments, guitar, some humming vocals, things like that, that really kind of brought it together. And that was the foundation of kind of where the melodies and the moods came from, I think, in my perspective anyway.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk specifically about 2 of them, because we sort of ended up with 2 themes that we return to throughout the series. One was the Song of the Free, which was sort of the title music I guess it was the end title music. And that has an interesting backstory. Can you tell us all about how you came across that and what you did with it?
Yeah, so I mean, it was in the list of songs that you'd sent me, and you'd sent me a track of it. And when I listened to it, I was like, hey, I recognize this tune. And I think a lot of the old hymnals, they used melodies that became popular music afterward, or they were a melody that was well known for a long time, and the lyrics were sung to that song. So the Song of the Free is sung, when you look at the old sheet music from the 1800s, it says on it, sung to the tune of "O Susanna," which is such a well-known tune, and I wanted people to know that it wasn't that song, that it was a different song. So how could I do that and give it its own space to make sure that it wasn't misinterpreted, because that is the immediate song you think of when you hear that melody. So I actually removed the melody, and I kind of suggested the melody through the accompanying music. So the end credits, that theme is more using the accompanying music to present the melody in the mind of the viewer. And so it kind of gives it its own space. I added some, singing harmonies. But you never actually hear that melody play in it. It's suggested the whole way. So I think we kind of achieved it through that, and it really gives it its own space. You might not even notice that it's that song when you're listening to it, unless you really kind of pick up that melody and sing it yourself. So that was that theme. And then there were a few others that you sent me more episodes and more scenes, there were just these melodies that kept fitting with certain scenes, like the cemetery had in the end. The way is so delightful.
Okay, Jenny? So this is one of the minor monuments that we found, a stone here marked with S. So it seems that's maybe the matriarch and patriarch had the big monuments. The rest of the family would get a smaller block. These are all broken, but I think originally they were probably about 2.5 feet, maybe 3 feet long, pushed straight down.
That melody line just seemed to fit whenever we were talking about the history of the cemetery or going through scenes. And I probably have about 5 or 6 different versions of it that I've recorded and placed, slower, faster, with different instrumentation added to support. And that theme just kind of emerges throughout the series, and it keeps coming back. So that's kind of how that's kind of how those themes developed.
I hope people notice this stuff when they watch it, right? Like I hope they go, oh, I heard that music before, right? Yeah, well, that's the cemetery's theme, right?
Yeah, yeah. I sometimes I mean I agree with you on some level. Sometimes I hope they don't notice it at all, because it's got to as a whole kind of come together, right?
It's kind of like not noticing the editing.
I love it when people do notice it, because I'm a nerd like that, and I will notice all of those details. So both is good, really.
I mean, you drew the short straw. You got to work with me, and I'm a little bit all over the map sometimes, because sometimes inspiration strikes in the middle of the night, and off I go, and I get some stuff done. But I would send you these sort of little stems, these little visual essays of things, and say, oh, Liz, what do you think about this? Do you think there's music that fits with that? You kind of touched on that before, but how was that process of sort of like you were really kind of in the editorial process with me a lot of ways, because I played off of you and you played off of me.
For sure, yeah. Well, one of the first things I notice is that an editor and a director, and both, will actually really clearly set the pace of a scene. And that's either through the cuts of the scenes, or, if you're panning across, the speed of the camera, all of those things very quickly set a pace, which is usually the tempo that I'm starting at, and I do a few tests. And that is one of the major kind of indicators of what the music is going to feel like and what it's going to look like. And you can play with that a little bit, but usually it's a very organic thing. And I don't usually think of it that intellectually, it just kind of happens organically. So that's usually the starting point. And then aside from that, the instrumentation, like I talked about before, or making sure you have kind of a set of sounds to use, kind of like a musical template that are going to be consistent throughout. But after that, it's really the people in a documentary. It's the real people and what's happening in film that's fictional. It's the characters, and they really set the mood. Like a person can have their own theme. They really set a mood and a vibe in the scenes and what they're talking about. And also, I mean, you as the director have the vision, so it's always first and foremost what your vision is, how you want the audience to experience it. What are some, it's hard to translate those descriptive words of emotion into music, and what does that sound like?
Yeah, well, we're talking about non-quantifiable things, right?
Yeah,
like it's not a one or a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
I feel like we kind of had to develop our own language around that a little bit.
For sure, yeah. And it's all open to interpretation too. I mean, it's the viewer has their own experience, and they might experience it completely differently. But it's on us to deliver kind of a cohesive thing, and my job is to really support you in your vision with the music, and not take away from it, not distract from it, not like outshine it at any moment. I'll be perfectly happy if people don't notice the music, actually, and they just notice how they feel while they're watching the music, while they're watching the documentary and the film.
So is there a particular theme or a particular song or a particular sequence in Canfield Roots that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them were a lot of fun to put together, just challenging, because I was working with some source melodies, but there were some that were unique and original. And one of them it ended up being a theme that came through often, but it was one of the more emotional pieces. There are some scenes with Betty Ann that come up, and there's an underlying piano melody that's very, I mean, for me, very emotionally charged. And the way I wrote that, the first scene that I saw with her, it was Betty Ann kind of describing her childhood. She was talking about her mother, her experience growing up, and then her friend Linda also kind of talks about Betty Ann and describes her. And they're describing these like wonderful, strong, resilient women who they have these kind of amazing stories, and had amazing potential, like such intelligent people with potential. But there are always this underlying kind of struggle and hardship and situations out of their control and power, where they were, even if they didn't directly express it, they were being held back from reaching their full potential. And so the music, I always want the music to mirror that. So that music, it kind of came naturally, and I didn't really think about it at the time, but that music piece wants to be major, so that it wants to be positive, it wants to be up and major, but there are these notes that keep coming in, that keep changing each of the chords into, it's just not quite getting there. So it kind of mirrored the story that she was telling and the experiences that she had in the same way.
I made friends very easily with girls. I didn't have a lot of friends who were boys, and I never dated in high school. I was never, ever, ever asked to a school dance. Oh yeah, I knew that I'd never stay there.
And those scenes made me very emotional the first time that I watched them without music. And I've seen them probably 20, 25 times as I've been editing and mixing and all of that. And still, even as I watch it now, I always get emotional in those scenes still. And I think the coupling with that music and her story and everything, that was for me, that was it fit well, and and it felt good to kind of have that, be allowed to add that emotionality to it as well.
And I think, I mean, that's beautiful. I agree with you 100%. I think that speaks to the power of music, and also the power of, combining these things together, and sort of the art and the craft of it, right? Because
Absolutely.
There's so many multiple layers that we're going for all the time, or at least we hope we're going for those things. Maybe we don't always achieve it. We try our very best, but absolutely, whenever everything sort of seamlessly fits together like it was always meant to be, that's an amazing moment.
Yeah.
And there were a number of those moments in Canfield Roots for me. I won't even go into we'll be here all afternoon if I talk about my favorite musical moments in Canfield Roots.
Yeah, for
So
me as well.
Other than scoring some films, you've been up to something else that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I've been in bands all of my life, and I've kind of been a supporting musician, and I've been a songwriter, but I've never released anything as Liz Dimo, as a solo artist. So for the past about year, I've been working on a solo EP, and I finally have finished it. And it's a 5-song kind of debut EP of mine, and it's 10 years in the making, 10 years of kind of my own personal autobiographical stories of life and love and and heartbreak and those kinds of things, as songs often are about. And yeah, so the EP is called 10 Years, and it's being released on December 1st, and it can be found pretty much everywhere music is streamed and sold. So that'll be available December 1st, which I'm excited about that.
Check out the links. You know, what do the YouTube guys do? The links. We'll post the links.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, it's been, for me, it's been such an amazing experience working with you. I always, we would write emails, we would do our Zoom calls, and I would go, I don't know whether I'm being descriptive enough. And then I wouldn't worry so much, but I'd be like, am I describing this in a way that will make any sense, right? Yeah. And then you would always come back with something that just fit, right? And I mean, there would be adjustments that we'd have to make, timing or whatever, or I'd change my mind. I think that was 90% of our problems. I'm changing my mind. I'm doing something different. Yeah. And I was just so taken by how sympathetic that music was to what I had thought in my head. And then as time went on, it started happening pretty quickly, but more and more, I couldn't see those sequences, like even in my head when I'm thinking about them, I couldn't see them without hearing your music at the same time. Yeah. So to me, it was just an amazing collaborative experience. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy that I get to collaborate with amazing people like you. And yeah, for everybody who's listening and watching this, I've heard the EP. I got a sneak preview. It's amazing. So you should go.
Thank you. Thank
you.
So
thanks, Liz. We all have work to do. I guess we'll, you got anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. I mean, it's been an amazing experience for me as well. And the collaboration, like you said, I feel exactly the same way. And yeah, it's been amazing. The story is incredible. And I've watched it a few times now on my own. And it's just they're wonderful people, and it's a great story that needs to be told. So very kind of proud and happy and grateful to have been able to work on it.